Welcome to Birth to Net Worth, where we normalise the conversation and emotions surrounding money and wealth to effect a massive change for future generations in their relationship towards finances, building family wealth as a collaborative legacy. Here is your host, Tristan Trenberth.
Good afternoon and welcome to Birth to Net Worth, episode 15. Today, we have a gentleman from San Diego joining us. We met through the real estate community several months ago, got in closer and closer touch, talking about different strategies that each of us are working on. And somebody that's just, in the not too distant past, become a father, being a husband. And I would love to introduce to you guys a gentleman by the name of Kent He. Kent, I'm going to bring you into the studio right now. Kent, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well, thanks. Very well. So, Kent, tell us a little bit about your background. Where you're in San Diego. Have you lived there all your life? Tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of background. So right now, I am a full-time real estate investor. I did grow up in Boston. I lived there for about 28, 29 years of my life. I used to work in a lot of corporate environments, meaning doing post-merger integration work for a large consulting company. I left that job and I tried to run a bakery and try to start my own bakery by learning the kind of crafts from the top three in Boston because I wanted to specialize in something that a bakery that specialized in croissants and coffee. Uh, Long story short,
Great things.
uh, I helped a cousin turn around their failing restaurant that was losing about $20,000 to $30,000 a month. So that was a big confidence boost. But I used up all my liquidity supporting the restaurant business. So I had to go back to corporate America, worked at a Fortune 500 company, a large insurance company, where I worked in a startup arm within that insurance company to basically take and build a technology for their company to scale their business from about 7 million to about $80 million in that business alone. And long story short, I started investing in real estate about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, and I have found tremendous success, whether it's by luck or just simply by taking action. And here I am today. I joined Sub 2 and have met so many great people in Sub 2, and including yourself, Tristan. Just incredible group of community. And that's where I am today. I live in San Diego now. I have a daughter. She just turned 1 and she's so sweet. She's absolutely a bundle of joy. So that's where I'm at.
Fabulous. Well, thanks for the background. Um, So let's get back to the genesis. What's your first memory of money? Was it your parents buying you an ice cream or a magazine, or you asking for something? What do you remember first about money? Where did you encounter it?
I think the first time we ever had a conversation about money was when I wanted video games when I was young. And back then, Super Nintendo games, they were like $50 a pop. Man, they were expensive. And I still can't believe my parents bought them for me because I knew how hard they worked. And I just never realized like how much money I was taking up with video games because they would probably earn not even $50 a day. And they would basically buy me a video game for $50. And it's crazy when I think back about it now, like how lucky I was and how much my parents sacrificed for me. And it just helped put it into perspective when I first started my minimum wage job, just working at CVS pharmacy, making like $7 an hour. And that's when I started realizing that one, I need to start thinking about when I purchase something, how much time am I actually putting into it in order to acquire that? And that was such a big eye opening moment where I'm so glad I worked in that job because it helped me value money a lot more and value what my parents gave me at that time. But my parents, we definitely came from a poor background. My parents never had a college education. My mom probably only had about up to an eighth grade education in China before she, quote unquote, not forced, but like she basically had to go start working at such a young age. And she was sent to another house just to be a servant. And going to the woods, chopping wood for firewood. It's just like the very grunt labor that they had to go through. It's just incredible. And it really makes me feel like the problems that we have nowadays, they're nothing compared to what our
Yeah,
parents went through.
our
And my
internet
dad,
is quick
yeah,
enough.
I know, right? And
Yeah.
my dad also had a high school education, but when they first came over to America, they didn't know English. I'm still incredibly surprised they made the move because that seems so scary, right? You're coming to a new country, you don't know a single ounce of English, and they had to live in a two-bedroom apartment with 9 people in it. And I didn't even have a crib when I was living in that apartment. I just slept on the stroller that was tilted back, and it's just incredible, like what grit they had and how they were able to kind of just make things work. And it was just one of those apartments in the heart of Chinatown in Boston at that time where if you flick open the lights in the middle of the night, you can hear the cockroaches and the mice just like scurry away, just like
Yeah.
that. So it was a very, very different lifestyle for sure. And I still remember the day we got our first affordable housing admission, and my parents were just in tears, right? Because they were finally able to kind of get their own space with a reasonable rent that allows them to be able to save some money from their jobs and be able to put food on the table with less stress. So that's why you and I have had this conversation about where, I'm addicted to helping people because I want to give people a very strong foundation as a home for children to kind of grow up in through affordable housing. And you know through my whole life, that's how I realized like I'm addicted to helping people because I used to be an EMT. I worked as an EMT for 5 years, but I only made like $12 to start, man. Just
Yeah.
imagine who's gonna answer 911 calls when the next pandemic happens, and no one's gonna be answering those calls because they're not being paid enough. And I
Yeah.
think the only way to keep these great people in these amazing giving professions is by going affordable housing route. So that's kind of where I am at with my investment journey, where I'm trying to create a diversified portfolio of short-term rentals and affordable housing units.
That's amazing. We covered so much there. So with your parents, were both born in China and moved here. I understand.
Yeah, they were both born in China. They came here in about 1985. So
The
they've been
immigrant
here for
mindset seems to be very different to the I'll say native in the fact that people born of many generations of this country are just so different. I've interviewed many of each of the different backgrounds. Each obviously culture is very different, but there is just a very different mindset of the immigrant where they've left behind things that we couldn't ever imagine in our comfortable
Mhm.
lifestyle here, and the opportunity to sacrifice something is you look at inspiration and motivation. Inspiration is something that would be nice to do. You're inspired to do it because there's a passion, but the motivation is generally, from what I read, is more
Mhm.
of a need, and it's a motivation to provide an inspiration at the end of the struggle or the sacrifice to provide something like for their children, for you to
Mhm.
provide that different future, the opportunity that they never had, and it just breeds a different reasoning and mindset around money because it's a tool at that point. It's an aspiration to be more and do more with what
Mhm.
you have when you come from so little or nothing. And I
Yeah.
think being born into a comfortable lifestyle is also almost a disability because you don't respect and understand what the toil and trouble there is to go through to manifest these things. And like you said, when you realized a $50 game was X number of hours of your mum and dad working,
Mhm.
and it was like, wow. Then when you picked that up, that was a very different situation when you then looked into your relationship to money at CVS or wherever it was you were
Mhm.
working. So did your parents have a very similar mindset around money, or did they have a little bit of a no, I'm not looking for
It was
conflict
it
here, but
was
was there a conflict in or a difference in the way they looked at things?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say in practical examples, right? My parents were the type to go to a supermarket that was a couple blocks further away so they can save 20 cents per pound on vegetables.
Yeah,
Right? That's how much and how scarce the resources were.
yeah,
And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense because they didn't have much money in China growing up,
yeah,
where you know, once a year they would have chicken for Chinese New Year. That's absurd. That's crazy. It blows my mind. They're like, yeah, we look for Chinese New Year because that's the year we have chicken. Think about how abundant we have in just food and the resources that we have today. It's crazy. It's like nothing compared to what they went through. And just to see the amount of sacrifice that they put in, They no doubt changed the trajectory of my life by coming to the US. And that's literally the same thing what we're trying to do for our family, right? We're trying to continue changing the trajectory of our family and the future generations because of the decisions that we make, and we learn from the role models that our parents have. Now,
Yeah.
my parents super hardworking, and but you can see like there are a couple of times where I told my dad about the real estate stuff and how I found a niche in that works because I specialize in bachelorette themed Airbnbs right now. And he's like, well, make sure you don't share your secret with other people. You want to keep the secret to yourself. And I was like, no, dad, that's not how it works anymore. How we're going to become wealthy is by helping more people than we take, giving more than we take. And the wealth will inevitably come when you help enough people. It's just inevitable. It just that's how it works nowadays. And I think it's hard for you to change that mindset. But as soon as I said it, he's like, okay, I agree. It's just they never had anyone or role models that were in a more affluent or wealthy position that was able to educate them like, hey, there's another way to make money instead of just nickeling and diming and saving every penny.
Yeah.
There's you could be instead of taking the extra walk to a further away supermarket, you could be spending your time reading a book. You can spend your time meeting more people and networking.
Mm.
And that's what I'm trying to make sure I expose my daughter to when she grows up and our kids kind of growing up,
Yeah.
right? We have to show them that there's another way. And there's so many different ways to make money, but you have to be guided by the right principles and a reason for why you're doing it. And everyone's going to have their own different why. I know you have your own charitable cause, Tristan, and I love it. It's just that we just need to figure out why are we doing this. And for us, right? I told you the story before. I want to do affordable housing for social workers, nonprofits, and EMTs
Yeah.
because these are the people that help people every day.
Yeah.
And if I get 1,000 of these units and these people work 8 hours a day and they help one person an hour, we could be waking up every day helping 8,000 people. And those 8,000 are going to help another 8,000. And in a small world of ours, they're going to help our kids, our grandkids, and the great grandkids when we're not here anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm calling that generational help, not generational wealth, because generational wealth will probably disappear on average in 3 generations. But how do I make sure that when I'm not here anymore, someone's going to be there to help our kids when we're not there anymore? And that is so much more fulfilling and so much more motivating every
Yeah.
day, man. It's that's why I wake up every day and I'm so driven by it because when you see your daughter, like your precious little baby girl growing up, you're just like, God, I just want to make sure she's well taken care of when my time is up. And
Yeah.
time life is short, man. So that's kind of my story. That's my motivation, man. I'm so passionate about this stuff. And I think that's why you and I connected so well.
I think you're right. Absolutely. So, affordable help for affordable housing for socially contributing people is huge, and your bachelorette themed Airbnbs as well, short term rentals. Both
Mhm.
are both are quite a niche within a niche. Um, how are you looking at investing for the longer term? Obviously, that's a cash flow and an equity builder as well as your own in the
Mhm.
property. How are you looking to provide um, investment strategy for the long term for your daughter? On
Absolutely.
here, we talked to a couple of different people recently. We talked to Ira about whole life policies. I'm going to have
Mm.
somebody come and talk to us about self-directed IRAs in the next few weeks. All things that people don't really think about until their 20s, until they're at work and they get
Yeah.
off the 401k, and then that's a 15-year, 20-year delay on when they could actually start that. And I'm listening to The Psychology of Money right now, and it was talking about Warren Buffett. Let's just say he's been investing for 60 years.
Yeah.
If he had started investing 5 or 10 years later, he would have accumulated 40 or 50% less wealth, not because of that 10 years was particularly
Mm.
lucrative, but just from the compound effect of the amount of time that he's been investing consistently. He's not like
Mhm.
a day trader where he's pulling stock out there, buying stock on the moment. He's
Mhm.
looking at a 5, 10, 20, 30, 40-year future of very tiny movements, just tweaking little things here and there. And
Mhm.
the compound effect of just being very steady rather than being very, very micro on everything.
Yeah.
You're changing all of these things, and they say all of these funds well underperform the market if they just left the stock where it was for a 30-year period. They'd have got
Mhm.
a better return than trying to buy this, sell this at these different times. On average, they're getting a lower return in the long run than just leaving stuff where it is.
Hmm.
What are you looking at as far as, your, I don't know if you got whole life, whether you do the infinite banking thing, whether you got self-directed IRAs where you can, buy property with those entities. How
Hmm.
are you looking forward to, your retirement come investment to then, build a legacy for, and probably when she's old enough with your daughter?
Yeah. So I've heard of this strategy before where, and we might be getting into like parenting philosophy, right? But for me, what I recognize and anticipating is that my daughter is not going to listen to me when she's a teenager. I don't know if that's going to be
That
true or
never
not, but
happens, Ken. That never happens.
but this is what I'm planning to do. I think I'm gonna be buying a one or two properties where I put it on like a 15-year mortgage or something like that. Maybe it's a creative finance deal, and I'm just gonna let the tenant kind of pay it off, so that by the time she's an adult or if she wants to go to college, she can actually see and witness that the property has been paid off, and magically she has a wealth, right? I think the best way is not to tell my daughter what to do, is to simply show her the
Yeah,
possibilities. And I'll also put some money in like a stable stock like Apple or something like that, right? I'll put that aside. And I'm going to say, hey, this was for you when you were born. And at that day when you're 18, look at what has happened with just patience and just having a diversified portfolio of investments so that you can see and feel that your life has changed dramatically at 18 years old compared to some of your other friends who might not have had the same education or just had the luck of running into a great community like we did,
mm,
right? There's so much education out there, but if you never go looking for it, you're never going to find it. So I
mm,
think I want to make sure I expose her to the principles of investing, but making sure that she can do whatever she wants.
yeah,
Honestly, I think if she doesn't get into real estate investing, that's perfectly fine because your kids will never be the person that you tell them to be, right? But I want her to have the option to. So like I told you, right? I loved being EMT, man. Absolutely loved it. But it was not sustainable. I couldn't live in a better neighborhood with good schools on $12 an hour. But
mm,
if I am able to give that option to my daughter where she can just be a social worker for the rest of her life, but not having to worry about a poor lifestyle, then
yeah,
I feel like I've done my job as a dad, that I have given her the choice to do whatever she wants to do in life. And if she wants to travel the world, awesome. Like
yeah,
that's what I really want to provide for my daughter, is to give her the choice to do what she wants versus telling her what to do, and
yeah,
showing her that she has the power to impact so many people and she can create wealth, right? With affordable housing, we can create wealth helping other people. It's a fantastic business model, and it's one that I feel like if I become an authority in this space, um, I will be able to motivate so many more people to kind of come into the space and continue
yeah,
investing. And I'm hoping I can inspire others. And I recognize this is like I caught myself talking about affordable housing with you, and I was like, wow, I'm really passionate about this. So now that's how I decided, like, I need to double down on this. Sometimes you just need to be having the self-awareness of like, wow,
yeah,
what am I passionate about? Catch yourself, listen to how you talk about it.
yeah, yeah. I think that's incredible. My friend Brian did the same thing. He bought a house, 15-year mortgage, put whatever it was into it, and by
Hmm.
the time his child is 18, same thing. She's gonna have a thing that she can either sell, she can, keep renting it, maybe refi it, pull something out to then go and do
Yeah.
college. But you mentioned the T word we were talking about before we started, travel. I think it's so important for kids to get out of their own country. I
Oh my
did a
God.
talk on this about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a TED style talk, and
Hmm.
it was talking about the importance for Americans to leave their own country at a young age, because America's a great country, no doubt about it. But how do you measure the best against the rest if you've never left
Hmm.
the borders? And I think it's important for kids to have the opportunity to see the world in a different way and understand that just going straight to college isn't necessarily the best modus operandi for most kids. They haven't figured themselves out yet. They only know what they've been exposed to through childhood, which is mostly directed by their parents.
Hmm.
Go to Mexico, Canada, Guatemala, South America, Asia, Europe, somewhere else, and hopefully multiple places. They can go and find, not to compare, but to contrast the different cultures and societies, and see where they can integrate and find new friends with different
Hmm.
perspectives perspectives, different views, different experiences in the world. And then once they come back, they may stay. Hopefully, they might stay. His kids went One of their kids went to the Philippines before COVID. They got stuck there through COVID, and they're pretty happy down there now. They will come back at some point, but it's just the perspective of it doesn't have to persist where it is right now. And coming back, I'd rather my kid went away for a year or 2 and came back and say, "I'm really passionate about this thing. I learned so much about this thing, saw all of these things. I really
Mhm.
wanna go and study this thing." And you know their heart's gonna be in it instead of picking the major their parents are,
Yep.
"Oh, my kid's gonna be a doctor or a lawyer."
Yeah.
And they go and do that, and they're miserable for 30 or 40 years working or never really passionate about that. They don't succeed, they don't have the success they could potentially have where their heart isn't necessarily in it. So, if we can provide, like you said, the choices that, yeah, your kid can go and travel for 2 months, 2 years, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and know that buying an extra house is gonna pay for living expenses while they're away. Another house might pay for the flights between the, cities or the countries that they wanna fly to. So they understand that building out an investment, you can pay money to buy a house instead of spending the same money on a around the world
Mhm.
trip, 20 grand. You can go and buy a house, and that's paying for your travel and the cash flow
Yes.
whilst
Yes.
around, you know?
That's exactly it, man. She needs to know that, right now we have a home in a gated community, and I can watch the sunset from my patio every day. She needs to know that's not normal.
Yeah,
That's not normal. Like, most people don't have this life that we have. We had to work for every ounce of it for sure. But she needs to know that there are so many people out there that are grinding and struggling every day to put food on the table.
yeah.
And she needs to go to these other countries where, poverty is a much, much bigger problem. And she needs to be exposed to the conditions that other people live in, and
Yeah,
by which they are still able to make it work. And I think you caught it out really, really well. It's like she needs to see and be able to have the contrasting view on what else is out there, because I think in an age of social media, this metaverse that they're working on, I don't want my child to be trapped and stay in a virtual world when there's so much beauty in the world. She
yeah,
needs to, one, always seek out the opposite opinion no matter what she does. And what I'm trying to work on right now, and then had the conversation with my wife, is like the number one thing we need to work on is like to help our kid build her self-esteem. I think
yeah,
that's the most important thing we need to do. You're not going to be able to keep her off the phone. You're not going to be able to keep her off social media. So you got to work on what you can control, and that's helping her become a very confident young woman, so that when she faces all this adversity, she can handle it. And I think that's what we owe it to our kids to kind of work on now, especially as like young parents.
yeah. You touched on the mental health right there. It's absolutely right. I mean, being teenagers is rough enough, and
Hmm.
having kids that are spending time in their room. As a parent, I wasn't aware enough that there were challenges going on and being experienced, and I want to raise that awareness for parents
Hmm.
that look for these signs. If this isn't necessarily normal, then we had COVID. That kind of
Oh
I
my god,
missed
yeah.
more signs there, and then they're also the consumers on social media. They're just consuming, consuming, comparing,
Hmm.
and like you said, the self-esteem is such a huge, huge part of this.
That's right. And I think we owe it to ourselves, right? We have a completely different set of challenges where, our parents before were just trying to put food on the table. Nowadays we have to deal with social media, all these distractions out in the world, making sure our mental health is being taken care of, especially for our kids. It's a different set of challenges, and I'm
Yeah,
not saying it's more difficult or harder than what my parents went through and our parents went through. It's just a different set
different.
of challenges, and we
Yeah,
need to figure out how to adapt to it. And surrounding ourselves with the right people is probably the best thing. And I think it has been challenging, right? Where I'm a super hard worker, and in the past, it's always been like me getting things done. But as I recognize the impact that I want to have, I have to involve more people. And how do I develop that trust to start meeting other people? And Pace Morby always says like, hey, we gotta start dating other people within the professional community. How do we do that? And I'm so glad I met someone like you, that we can share our whys, we can talk about our interests, get some parenting advice from you, and just learn from each other, and just trying to challenge you to continue that positive mindset and a giving mentality.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think acceptance is one of the biggest thing. It doesn't mean you condone or condemn.
Hmm.
just accepting what is and not necessarily have an opinion on things. I think if kids could understand that their opinion is the foundation of all of their suffering as humans, that is the human condition.
Hmm.
Us having an opinion on something is what causes us to have a problem. The fact that we are in conflict with something, there's something we don't
Hmm.
agree with, we say that's wrong. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just weakening to me, so I accept that's going on. It doesn't mean I have to agree with it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some great interviews on like at my Let show, and I forgot the doctor's name, but I remember him talking to him, and he was talking about like how our thoughts are kind of the programmers of our mindset and our body and everything that we do. And I think it's so important for us to teach our kids how to think. I think that's so much more important than telling them they're wrong. It's guiding them along the thinking process so that they can see alternative perspectives or creative solutions, right? It's kind of like throughout our entire life, we've been taught to go to school, read books, get good grades, and that's pretty much it. How much problem solving is there and how much innovation is there, right? It's like there's different ways to do math nowadays compared to when we learn math. It's crazy, but
Yeah,
it's why do I have to do it that way when another way works, right? How do I teach them that?
yeah,
And I think teaching them to think is probably going to be another great and important skill. And I'm not sure if like I'm going off track here, but you and I just like connect so well, and we just start having these natural conversations about this
yeah.
stuff.
It's funny you mentioned the maths because, I think we probably learned a similar way, 15, 20, 30 years ago, whenever it was, however many decades that
Mhm,
was ago. But yeah,
mhm,
when I was trying to help my kids with multiplication or division
mhm,
like 5, 6, 7 years ago, well, that's not right, Daddy. That doesn't work that way. And I said, well, show me how you're supposed to work it out. And it's all this convoluted, extremely longhand way of doing things. I said, well, if you do this, but that's not, they need just to do it like this. I said, I don't know why it's being so much more complicated than it needs to be, and I talked to the teachers. So I'm not saying it's wrong, it's the wrong answer, but why is there a reason that this is being taught in a more complicated fashion than, and even the teachers agreed. Yeah, we know it's not the easiest way, but that's how we have to teach it.
and that's really unfortunate. We should be teaching our kids how to think differently and think smarter. It's kind of
Yeah,
like, you know, in real estate, before we even found real estate, our path, and that was all that was passed down to us from parents, were go to school, go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, live off your 401k when it's time to retire,
yeah,
right? And if that was the only path that was presented to you, you never knew there was another path,
yeah,
right? And I think that's why it's so important that we're being leaders, we're paving the way, we're getting the scrapes and bruises, but also that we can show and allow our kids and our friends and family to say, hey, there's another path to this. You don't have to take that path that everyone talks about. There's
yeah,
another path that I already got the scrapes and bruises for. I figured it out. It was really hard, but you now have the choice to take another path. And I think what I've realized, coming from a group of friends that have come from similar backgrounds, right? They don't have the same motivation for real estate as I do,
yeah,
and I realize it's very hard to change the perspectives of your friends. And when they're in a very good comfort zone, they have their 9 to 5s, and they are not set in their ways, but they're comfortable, and they don't see a need to pursue a different path.
yeah,
And sometimes their comebacks would just be like, well, I'm happy. They're like, "Are you happy? Like making more money doesn't make me happy." And I was like, it's not about happiness. It's just about, hey, I want you to have a choice. And I think what I realized I needed to do was like peel back on trying to tell them what to do and to show them like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Feel free to come along if you like. And
yeah,
that was a really big mindset shift for me, man, where you have to recognize you can't change people. And I'm carrying that forward in my parenting, where now I know I can't change my daughter for how she thinks. I simply have to show her and let her decide whether she now wants to take that path or not.
yeah. It's very true. I mean, like, I think it was maybe Napoleon Hill, maybe I'm misquoting, but man
Mhm,
convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
mhm,
It has to markedly change them, or they have to note and you know see that difference for it to be real for them. Because
mhm,
otherwise, it's just they're stuck on. You know, I think not to get into religion or politics, but just the principle of most kids take on their parents' religious and or
mhm,
political views, and many of them will defend them till the hilt.
Yeah.
to the death almost, but they don't understand why the parents had those opinions. They just take them on, whether it's any of these
Mhm.
opinions. And the same, America's the best country in the world. Great. How many others have you seen, and how many can you compare and contrast to say that, oh, there's not an equal or comparable experience in a different country with different conditions and
Yeah.
situations? So I think it's really important to guide people in that way and
Yeah.
travel. I think it was Mark Twain that said something on the lines that travel cures racism, or I can't remember the term he used, but something along those lines. And I think that's really really sums up a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta experience other perspectives to break down barriers, right? It starts
Yeah,
by just being a good listener, and instead of telling people what to do or changing them, right? You gotta just listen to hear their perspectives. I think so often we start off by saying, "Well, this is what I do, and this is how it was successful for me." Why don't you ask them like what their goals are and what makes them happy, right?
yeah,
Because I've been to the Caribbean islands, and man, the first time I went to Barbados, it was like the happiest people in the world. I used to live in Boston, right? Super cold. Everyone doesn't really want to talk to you. I pulled up this parking lot and people were coming up to my car, and I'm thinking like maybe they just want money, but they're telling me where to park my car at the
yeah,
beach.
yeah,
What? This doesn't happen in Boston. No one cares about you, and you just get a different perspective on like what makes other people happy, and there are so many good people out there. You just got to go look for them, and it's hard, right? It's hard to break out of your comfort zone, especially when you're around the same group of high school friends
yeah,
or college friends. But it's what you need to do to grow, and sometimes you have to leave some friends behind just to kind of pave the path so that you can come
yeah.
back and help them, right?
They say you always find what you're looking for, whether it's bad people, good people, problems or solutions. I think that's very well said. What you focus on expands, and you'll find.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so tell me about your wife. Is she from a different sort of social background from yourself? Does she have a contrasting attitude of money where you've kind of aligned, or changed
Uh,
perspectives together in the marriage?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my wife also works a 9 to 5 right now. But she has been so supportive of me, man. It's just, I asked her, like, hey, should I quit my job? I think I really want to do this. And she has always been the number one supporter. Even when I left my job to go work at a restaurant where I made no money, she's like, go for it. When I decided to leave real estate, she's like, well, there's never going to be a good time to leave. So you might as well do it now because you just found some
Yeah,
success for it. And
yeah,
I cannot thank her enough by just recognizing how supportive she is. And her parents also came from an immigrant background. They did come from Vietnam a little bit earlier, and they were able to still get educated and learn English.
yeah,
And they also got started investing in real estate, but they've only done affordable housing in Massachusetts. So we kind of never really talked to her parents about real estate because I think we recognize it's good to kind of separate what they're doing versus what we're doing. Whenever I tell them like this is what I'm doing, they would give me advice about like all the problems that I face in affordable housing and renting
yeah,
to affordable housing tenants, because there are some stereotypes of Section 8 tenants where some people might come in here, they might bring drama with them, they might bring drug gangs, etc. Into your property and cause you more headaches than normal, right?
yeah,
And I didn't want to kind of go against their experience because their opinions are shaped by their experience.
yeah,
What I need to do is recognize and learn from their experience, like, okay, I know that this is very, very possible. How do I protect my investments against those scenarios? Because I'm raising capital from partners, right? And all my friends, I'm so humble that they believe in me, that they're willing to invest with me in our mission. They just ask simply like, "Hey, can we make it sustainable? Let's make sure that we're not reaching to our pockets every month
yeah,
to do this
yeah,
affordable housing mission." And that's why I really believe in our portfolio strategy of short-term rentals and affordable housing, so that it can be a good diversification strategy and continue to build wealth for their families too.
yeah,
So my my in-laws, they're absolutely amazing people. They're so supportive of Tina and my wishes. They never really kind of question us. And I honestly learned from them. Like they are now buying real estate, and they bought a property here in Southern California so that they can retire here, being in closer proximity with us. So it's amazing what real estate has done for them. And I just wish I opened my eyes earlier. But I don't think like that anymore. I live life with no regrets.
Yeah,
And I recognize that in my 20s, I could have started in real estate earlier, but I never for 1 second regret the choices that I made and the jobs that I took, because every single thing that I have done has given me the confidence to leave my job and try real estate. If you think about it, right? I had to tell myself every single time I'm about to buy a deal and I'm super scared, right? I had to tell myself, hey, I used to be an EMT. I used to answer 911 calls. People would used to get me. And I was 19 years old when I started, man. Like
yeah,
I didn't have a beard or mustache. I tried to grow out my mustache so I look a little bit older.
yeah.
um, but that's what I recognize that all your listeners should be doing. It's like start doing things that are hard, because eventually you can look back at it and give yourself the confidence to take the leap, because you are going to have to take some leaps of faith at some point and it's going to be really, really scary. And the only thing that's going to help you take that leap is by remembering all the hard things you have done already and recognizing and appreciating how much gains you have made in life already up to that point.
That's a really important thing to say. There's struggles in what we're doing through confidence and
Hmm.
sometimes financial struggles, and that's not necessarily relating to real estate. As parents, as adults, as human beings, we go through our learning experience of putting money in the wrong place or
Hmm.
not getting the return we thought. And I realized about 2 years ago that you know I might have sheltered my kids from some of the struggle from time to time, and there was some pride involved. I'm
Hmm.
divorced. I may wanted to sort of hide it from my ex-wife and stuff through embarrassment or whatever. But I'm not helping my kids understand that there is success on the other side of struggle, and there's lessons
Hmm.
learned through the struggle, and the persistence and the consistency to push through that is that part of the journey, which is the most important part of the journey. Not to set them up to think that everything's always going to be there and it's going to be rosy, and if something goes wrong, then
Hmm.
good grief, the world's falling apart. So I think
Yeah.
that's another thing that different cultures have um, different conversations about money. Some cultures have no conversation about money, and others
Hmm.
are really all in your business, and there's no barriers and boundaries between families. So, and those things can be both advantageous and also subtractive to family relationships and stuff. But I think it's so, so important to get over the taboo of money and say,
Mhm.
hey, I can't come out this week. Probably won't be out for a few weeks. I'm just buckling down for a little while. I'm putting some more money in
Mhm.
the bank, dealing with some stuff that I need to deal with in my responsibilities. And if more people would have that conversation with their friends and be transparent, other friends would be thinking, "Oh shit, I should have done that a few weeks ago."
Yeah.
I know I'm going out putting it on the credit card where I'm just trying to keep up with the Joneses or whoever it is
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
everyone else is going out. I need to go out as well, so I can't be the one that's left out. And FOMO is another thing in this day and age. You know, talking about those things, whether it's as an investor, whether it's in business or any level of success, it's like comparison with other people. Yeah, we can contrast businesses in a healthy way, but the only business that we or person we can compare is us against last week, last year, 10 years ago. Where have we come as a human being? Because if we're comparing against other people, it's like chalk and cheese. It's trying to compare different fruit, different things, metal and
Right.
wood. They've got different they've got different purposes, different functions, and we're not comparing things accurately. And I think that's where social media is such a breakdown for these teenagers and kids that are looking at other people
Yeah.
as a comparison rather than a contrast. I think, I know a friend of mine told me a couple of weekends ago, he said, somebody told me the other week, congratulations on your overnight success. And he stopped, and he was telling me how that shocked him because knowing how many years he's put into this business and in the recent 2 or 3 years, I mean, literally 2 weeks before they'd celebrated their 10th anniversary with 182 employees in the office.
Mhm.
And to be told congratulations on your overnight success was, I felt it was insulting to him. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but
Yeah.
where we look at these things and kids are looking at these teenagers. Oh, they're on YouTube. They got 1 million subscribers. They're making this much a month, and I put out 2 podcasts, and I've not got nobody's watched my videos. And Alex Hormozy, I think it was, says you got to put the content out. Or Gary V, got to
Mhm.
just keep putting the content out. And Hormozy said the same thing. It was like 2.5 years before he blew up. Something
Mhm.
else happened, and then suddenly everyone was interested in his content. But he had 2.5 years worth of content consistently out there. And if he had just stopped, maybe he wouldn't have had the other opportunity because he didn't have the history. Pace talks about
Mhm.
his Instagram was the reason that he got picked up for the big construction contract with his contract, the big job that he had many years ago,
Mhm.
because of putting himself out on social media. It wasn't a brag. It was just Instagram was new, and he just got on board with it and started posting some stuff about his family. And those
Mhm.
are the things where it's authenticity is difficult to detect for teenagers because they don't really know other than the A roll, the highlight reel
Mhm.
of life. That's all they're seeing, and they don't get to see their friends, especially through COVID, that, oh, they just got an Xbox, they just got a skateboard, they've just done this, they've just done
Mhm.
that. It's like they don't know the parents just won the lottery, or
Yeah.
they're making up for something that they're missing emotionally or spiritually. You know what I mean? They don't
Mhm.
get that full picture. So no wonder it just seems negative for them that, oh, I'm not good enough. My parents don't do this, or I don't have this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's really important to bear this in mind where we are building that legacy with our kids. I
Mhm.
see it as a relay race where as
Yeah.
parents, we're ahead in the track, and the kids are catching us up to speed, and they're taking the baton
Mhm.
at some point
Yeah.
where we're building something together, and then we can let them run with it because they've learned, they've got up to speed, and then we can slow down and enjoy life with them as they understand everything at a much earlier age, and we can enjoy much more of life together. I think that's going to change the way
Absolutely.
the world works for many people. But many people can't be entrepreneurs or
They
investors.
can. Yep.
It's not going to be for everybody, but it will change a lot of lives if we can help a lot of people avoid the paycheck to paycheck mentality and lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important for us to teach our kids and not tell them what to do again, right? But make them become or take on the identity of like, I am someone that does hard things. And I think if we ingrain that into them from day one, as soon as they're able to absorb those lessons, then I think we're setting them up for success, right? Because all the kids out there and everybody out there, I mean, they do want overnight success. They want to invest in Bitcoin and make $1 million overnight, right? Everyone wants it because you didn't have to do work except click a button.
Get rich
And
quick.
I know everybody wants to get rich quick. And that's unfortunately not not the reality for most people. Are there people that get rich overnight? Absolutely. But for the most part, 99% of the world, they're not going to be that lucky. And the ones that were lucky probably took an incredible risk in the beginning,
Yeah,
making that investment, right? But that's okay. But if we're able to teach them, like, hey, just do hard things, and that becomes a normal part of your everyday routine where you're trying to do hard things and fail at it, you're going to learn something every day and you're going to be miles and miles and miles ahead of your peers because of how well you've conditioned your mindset to take on challenges in adversity.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the cold showers in the morning here in Arizona, it's like it was what was it, 60, early, like high 60s or early 70s this
Hmm.
morning. The showers are getting colder again. I remember going through Christmas last year with the cold showers in the morning, and they say that
Hmm.
that in itself helps resiliency against stress when you
Yes.
essentially put your body under stress. Even if it's just a cold shower or an ice bath, I haven't done one of those yet, but I'm looking forward to that sort of thing. But again, it's building these things in that build that resiliency and the wish to excel and know that there's no overnight success, there's no get rich quick, and all of those
Hmm.
people that that do suddenly become the spotlight's on them.
Yeah.
It's like the basketball winner, the team, they win the cup. The smart ones, the very next day, we're not winners anymore. Now's the next season, which is
Hmm.
364 days away. Now we got to train for the next year's season. It's not like riding on their laurels for 6 months or a year saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, we're the winners," because otherwise they couldn't be the winners next year because they just wouldn't last like that.
That's right, man. I think, life is just a series of decisions. When I first thought back, like the silver lining during COVID, and you and I talked about social media, I deleted Instagram, I deleted Facebook during COVID, and I never really got back on until this year. But during COVID, I actually started reading a lot more, and that's how I found real estate for the first time. And I recognize, like, when I reflect back on the journey, it's like, wow, I made a lot of serious decisions. I made the decision to get a book. I made a decision to read it. I made a decision to get a home equity loan on my property based on what I learned. I used a home equity loan to buy my first Airbnb. And I learned how I needed to manage the renovations and what I needed to get the ARV up to. And long story short, right? If I didn't make all those series of decisions, I would have never became a millionaire with one of my best friends since 8th grade, and we both came from low income housing, man. Like, if we never made those decisions, those hard decisions and uncomfortable decisions along the way, it's
Yeah,
never one decision that makes it. It's a series of amazingly and hard and difficult decisions that you have to make, and uncomfortable ones as well. Because I was so scared, man. When I signed up first purchase contract, I was nauseous. I was getting ready to throw up that day. I gave a lowball offer because I was hoping they wouldn't accept it, and they did, right? And to think back now, where I was so scared, where I was ready to walk away because they wouldn't give me like a $3,000 or $5,000 credit for a sewer issue. And if I walked away from that deal, think about how much money I would have given up. Like, I would have never became a millionaire with the properties. Um, but I had to take a leap of faith, and I had to remind myself and my partner, like, hey, we have always done hard things. No matter what, we'll figure it out. And even if the worst case scenario happens, we will still be okay because of everything that we have done to set up our financial foundation up towards this point. Like, I still had a W-2 job at that point in time. So people can't take risks, they can take calculated risk as well. So I think
yeah,
for all your listeners out there, you have to figure out what your comfort zone is and your launching point is. You have to decide, like, what point will you be comfortable with it, and if not, what is your backup plan? So just so that you have a backup plan, because sometimes you need a backup plan to take more aggressive action.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful, Ken. We've covered so many topics. What would you like to leave us with for, whether it's talking about your daughter, or, what your next kind of step in your journey is?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is we're going to continue pursuing buying another short term rental, buying another affordable housing unit. If anybody wants to learn more about affordable housing or short term rentals, I like to think that I'm really good at underwriting short term rentals. I'm happy to help any of your listeners with that. They can just
Thank
DM
you.
me on Instagram, and I'm happy to help out, because my secret agenda, and that's not so secret anymore, I eventually want to help people make money so that they would be willing to kind of help us out when we want to invest in more affordable housing units, because I
Yeah,
recognize it's not the most profitable area, but I'm hoping I can help make people money so that they can have some to spare and invest in our mission right here. I think the last thing I would leave with your listeners is the model that we always grew up with when we didn't have much money. It's always a model that we say, hey, it's not about where you're at, it's about who you're with. So you got to recognize relationships, pour into your family, your loved ones, your friends, and the people that you care about, and never let that go. Because in life, it's not about how much money you make. It's really about the relationships that you make in life and those memories that you can kind of cherish when it's your time to go. So
yeah.
I had an awesome time with you, Tristan, man. This was fun. I loved it. Thank you for having me on, man.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ken. Guys, look out for the next slide after we finish. It'll have Kent's contact information. You can see his Instagram right here. We'll put his website and anything else he wants to share with you shortly. Kent, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us.
I love
Take
it.
care.
Thank you
See
so
you on the
much.
next one, guys. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you for your time in joining us on this episode. Please follow these links to learn more about this week's guest. Don't forget to subscribe and to leave us a comment below. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode of Birth to Net Worth.